Welcome to another episode of Fight the Burnout, where we help you, the police officer, through your department, eliminate burnout. Now, what is burnout? Burnout is exhaustion of physical or emotional strength or motivation, usually as a result of prolonged stress or frustration. That's the Merriam-Webster definition for burnout. Now, why does this matter when it comes to you as a police officer and your department? We are continuously, as a police officer, you are continuously under stress. Now, then you add in the frustrations of the world and the media and everything on top of it. And you're being set up to fail. Now, who am I? I'm Chris Chandler-Yates. If you're not familiar with me, I'm an American who currently resides in New Zealand. And I was a New Zealand police officer for 7.5 years, everything from frontline patrol to highway patrol, or what we call motorways here, and all the way to protection services. I did 7.5 years before I burned out really bad. And I can link it all back to one specific incident, but I was already starting to burn out at that point. The stress of the job I was not processing properly, the dead bodies, the domestics, the high level of alertness. I was not processing things already. And when I had a traumatic incident happen to my partner and I felt like I was the one to blame, I spiraled. And that's when the PTSD came in and then made the burnout even worse. Now, why do I tell you this? Because as we define the definition of burnout is exhaustion of physical or emotional strength or motivation. What is that? Emotional strength or motivation. As police officers, I'm sure when you decided you wanted to join, you were extremely motivated, driven. You're like, I'm going to do all these amazing, cool things. I'm going to be this amazing, impactful police officer. Maybe a year in, maybe 2 years in, oh, maybe 10 years in. Maybe it took that long. Maybe you had a good foundation before you joined. Maybe you had a little bit more life experience. Been around the block a few times as such. You had motivation, but then you lost it. What's emotional strength? Emotional strength is when you get thrown something that emotionally knocks you. You have the strength to overcome it. You have the tools, the resources, the habits to overcome it. Emotional strength is something that is trained and taught. It is not something that you just have. But it can get exhausted, as the burnout definition says, exhaustion of physical or emotional strength. Now, physical strength is one that's very easy to see coming. It's all the overtimes, it's doing the double shifts, it's picking up overtime to pay more bills because you put yourself in a shit financial situation. It's maybe it's just so that your wife doesn't have to work so they can look after the kids, or so your husband doesn't have to work, whatever it is. Physical burnout is actually quite simple to overcome. You do less. And it can help emotional burnout. But in order to actually overcome that emotional strength, we have to do a couple things in order to make sure that we don't get exhausted. And a couple of those things are your mental focus. What is it that you're focusing on every day? What language are you using every day? Over the coming weeks on the podcast, we're going to talk deeper into these things. How are you holding yourself? What physical actions are you doing? What's your routine like? Do you have a routine? What's your schedule like? And what us cops, what you cops and myself, I used to hate it as well. The buzzword that's going around, the self-care. What self-care are you using or are you doing? Do you have any kind of self-care? Or do you have what you call self-care, but really it's not? Because having these things in process, knowing your purpose, knowing how you talk to yourself, knowing how you actually interpret things will reduce the exhaustion of physical or emotional strength or motivation from prolonged stress and frustration. Because you will no longer look at things as a stressful situation or frustrated. Because when we're stressed out and when we're frustrated, guess what? Those two things can be shifted and changed with a moment's little tool. In a moment's notice, you can change it with a little tool. So I'm going to, on upcoming podcast episodes, we're going to talk about that. Now, why does all this matter for your department? Because a department that is extremely burned out is extremely more likely to suffer and have people go off on stress leave, have people resign. Study out of 2019 showed 26% of officers left in 2019 because of mental health, some sort of mental health struggle or disorder. That'd be PTSD, that'd be burnout, that'd be depression, that'd be anxiety. 26%. That's 2 to 3 out of every 10 officers that are leaving at the moment are because of burnout or mental health. And if we are not burned out, we're less likely to suffer from mental health or PTSD. What is the definition of PTSD? Post-traumatic stress disorder. A psychological reaction occurring after experiencing a highly stressing event. I'll rephrase burnout. Burnout is exhaustion of physical or emotional strength or motivation, usually as a result of prolonged stress or frustration. Prolonged stress versus a psychological reaction occurred after experiencing a highly stressing event. Well, if you have emotional strength, you're using it to counteract stress and frustration. Then when you hit that highly stressing event, you're able to process it more because you have better emotional strength. You have better emotional languaging. You have better motivation to actually work through it. In turn, the PTSD is there for a short time if it even hits you. So as a department, this is something you have to get vigilant on with your officers. You have to put in processes. Now, it is not something that you can just teach once and ignore afterwards. It has to be reinforced constantly. Police are seeing 18 plus times more trauma in the first 12 months of their career than a civilian does their entire life, and you're asking officers to do 30. That's 30 times 18 times as much trauma as a civilian will see in 30 years. That's a lot of trauma. And yet officers are not given and prepared with coping mechanisms to process and work through on their own, let alone as a team. So this is the definition of burnout and PTSD and how there are some ways to change it and counteract it. Shift your focus, shift the way that you look at things, shift how you talk about things, shift your body language. Get really, really clear on your purpose. Shift how you can look at the rules of things. What has to happen? What do you have control of? What don't you have control of? How are you taking care of yourself daily? Are you taking care of yourself? Or are you looking straight at work? Or are you looking straight at relationships and just focusing on taking care of them constantly? It means you're always giving energy to somebody else, never giving it to yourself. In turn, your battery is going to empty. If you are a department who wants some proven tools to reduce anxiety by up to 25% in just 4 hours, let alone over a period of time of consistent and constant training. If you want to reduce burnout in your department by 25+%, then grab the link down below. Go to createfromwhy.com. That's createfromwhy.com/LEO. You'll find the exact page. Book a time to talk with me. We'll take you through how we do our process, and then we can discuss on running an introductory day for your department and get you some results, and then see where we want to go from there. This is Fight the Burnout. Make sure you like, subscribe, share this episode around. Make sure you hit those alert bells because we are going to be giving some trainings away on this podcast to help you fight burnout, eliminate burnout, and make your department a better place.